All right, Tommy, we are off-roading in the brand new Lexus GX550 Overtrail.
Yeah, I think you got the country of origin a little wrong there. I think it might be actually the Overtrail, but you got the right spirit.
Yes, well, Uber and Over are very similar, having been to Uber Abergau. Uber Abergau? Anyway, let's get into it and talk about what this is and how it does off-road.
Right, so the basis of this vehicle is essentially the Land Cruiser Prado, also known as the 250 series, also known as the Toyota Land Cruiser here in the States, because that's all we're getting. But the Lexus does have a very notable number of changes, starting with the engine.
Yeah, so basically you get the same powertrain out of the Tundra, which is a big old twin turbo V6. Notice that the V8 is gone.
Smaller turbos than the Tundra though. Horsepower rating is 349. Torque is 79. That's it. Got to get the old noggin going. Now here was a big concern from folks, right? That old V8 was a low-end, torquey, lumpy motor. And when people hear turbos, they think of like 80s turbos that don't make any power until 8,000 RPM. But Lexus says that the peak torque range in this vehicle is between 2 and 3,600. And when you put it in low range like we are now, I have to say the power delivery is excellent. There is no turbo lag. There's no waiting for anything to spool up. Now granted, the trail they brought us on here at the launch is pretty easy.
Yeah, we're in the Sonoran Desert outside of Tucson, and this is a little bit more off-roady than a dirt road.
Yeah, it's so far just a mild little overland trail. Hopefully later this afternoon we'll do something more difficult. But yeah, I'm really impressed with the power delivery, and when you made it to that 10-speed auto, it's doing a great job of keeping it right in that like 2 to 3,500 RPM torque band.
All right, well, let's talk about the basics of this vehicle's off-road neatness. And that, of course, has to start with the fact that it is a body-on-frame vehicle, right? Which Lexus will tell you is better off-road than the competitor, the Defender, or what else does it compete with? Jeep Grand Cherokee, maybe, sort of, BMW X5, Mercedes-Benz GLE,
right?
And all those are unibody, not this.
Yeah, and you know, they'll talk about the isolation of the body and the frames when you're going off-road is quieter, more refined. They also said you're less likely to bend a unibody, obviously, because it's body on frame. Look, it's a tried and true platform. Now the suspension design, we've got an independent front suspension with high mounted A-arms, right? Out back we've got a 4-link solid axle, and they've gone away from any kind of air suspension setup, so this vehicle rides exclusively on coil springs now.
Yeah, which, you know, is good and bad.
Well, I mean, from a longevity standpoint,
it's good. From a ground clearance standpoint, it's bad.
Perhaps a little more limiting. It also uses the EKDSS setup, so it's got a sway bar, an infinitely adjustable sway bar disconnect essentially, that can do everything you need it to do on its own. So unlike other Toyota products where you push a button to disconnect the front, the EKDSS system is completely on its own, does everything it wants to do. It's also interlinked with the rear setup now, which is pretty cool. And what that means that when you go to low range, when you're on an off-road trail like we are now, there really is almost no head bob.
Yeah, it's really comfortable, but I'd like to try it on something a little more challenging. It's hard, you know, to talk about no head bob when you're on a dirt trail.
That's true. It's also now a completely electronic setup, no hydraulics, nothing like that. So in theory, it should be a completely dead reliable system.
Now we've got a whole bunch of off-road goodness here that you guys can't see, but hopefully we'll show you in the B-roll. So we not only have a locking center diff, but get this, Tommy, a locking rear diff.
Right, yeah, and on the previous generation that was not available, new to the 3rd gen, at least compared to the previous, and it's only really available on Overtrail, right? So there's a lot of different trims, something like 6 different trims of the GX550. You got the premiums, you got the plus trims, the luxury trims. The Overtrail is the off-roady one. That's the one that's getting that locking rear diff. Now they said the center diff, according to Lexus, is a torsion limited slip with a locking function, and every GX is going to have that center locker. But if you want to tie both rear wheels together at the same speed, you got to get the Overtrail.
And we do have different drive modes, and like Land Rover, Range Rover, there's new modes. There's an auto mode, so you don't have to think about, am I driving on snow? Am I driving on dirt? Am I driving on rocks?
Well, look, we got the normal drive mode, sport, comfort, that kind of thing.
Yep.
You also have multi-terrain select in this Overtrail, so you've got a number of different off-road modes. And like you said, Dad, there's now an auto function on that MTS, and it also works in high and low range. So where the old generation only worked in low range, the new gen will allow you to dial in the mode in high range as well.
And we also have a button that says DAC crawl, Tommy.
Yep, so you got crawl control, you got the downhill assist, lots of different things to play with in this new GX.
And probably most importantly of all, we've got actually specially built Toyos that you know, they designed in conjunction with this new GX Overtrail.
Overtrail, Dad. Yeah.
Wintertrail.
33-inch tall Toyo tires, open country, and for the first time
On 18s.
Yeah, on 18s, right? So you're not dealing with some massive 20-inch wheel. For the first time on a GX out of the box, you got real all-terrain rubber, which has been something that the vehicle's been missing for a long time. The GX has always been a little bit frustrating to me because it's always been based on the Prado series Land Cruiser, which is one of the most well-respected and world-renowned off-roaders on the planet. But in the US, the GX has been, you know, slapped with, I don't want to say the ugly stick, but we'll call it the luxury stick. It's
Yeah, and it had a kind of this jutting out jaw, right?
so much plastic on the front.
That wasn't good for off-roading. This one actually they designed specifically for off-roading. So like, let's say a Land Rover or a Range Rover, it's got, or a Jeep, now it's got more of that off-road DNA that's kind of built into it versus kind of being added onto a luxury vehicle.
Right, and you got a better approach angle if you get the Overtrail. You get a little bit more ground clearance with the Overtrail. Got a little bit of protection underneath. So whereas like the GX was such a good platform to start with in the second gen, but you really had to bring it to an aftermarket company to change the front end, to give it more clearance, to change the tires, whatever. The new GX and the Overtrail, you're ready to go hit some trails.
Yeah, no, there's a couple other things I want to talk about. There are these two binnacles that we're looking over right now, which are hoods, basically
Let's call it the reverse hood scoop. So you got these bulges on the corners, which more or less tell you where the corners are.
And they did some clever engineering. They lined them up with the wheels.
I don't believe that at all.
Okay, well.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but the fender flares on this vehicle are far beyond the bulges.
Well, if you guys look at the camera that's facing us, you can determine whether the little binnacles are lined up with the wheels so that you know where the wheels are.
Yeah, but I do like the reverse hood scoop in the middle because it gives you a lot of visibility, and that really is initial impression. The big difference between the third gen and the second gen is they've lowered the belt line considerably, they've brought the windshield very upright, and now you've got a far better view out of this vehicle.
You also have an incredible towing number with a built-in brake controller, Tommy. It actually tows, get this, more than the LX.
Yeah, it's like 9,069 pounds.
63? 69?
I'm not going to argue over 6 pounds with you, Dad. But
anyway, 9,000 pounds.
Yeah, $9,000, which is insane. The LX, I think, is 7. That's a huge difference, and the LX is the larger vehicle than this GX.
So I've got the spec sheet right here, and so I wanted to talk about pricing. So what do you think is the starting price on this Overtrail?
Well, the GX line starts at 64 now, so it's up a few thousand compared to last year. I think this is probably going to be 70 grand.
75,900
starting
is what this starts at
for the Overtrail. Ooh.
Then we've got this bi-tone paint that's a $350 option.
Okay.
We have this cool box.
Nice.
Which is actually really good. It does keep stuff cool.
Yep.
I would definitely pay the $170 for that.
Yep.
We have a digital key.
Nice.
$375. How much do you think the heads-up display is?
300.
900.
Oh.
How about Mark Levinson audio?
1,000.
1,140 plus a few other extras for a grand total of 80,119. 915. So $80,000, $81,000 give or take. That's a lot of money, dude.
Yeah.
That is definitely like Range Rover territory. It's even Grenadier, Ineos Grenadier territory. It's a lot of money.
It's flat. Look, you can tell that Lexus was targeting Defender.
Yeah.
Right? That is Defender territory right there. And like
for a 110.
You can say that, yeah, GLE X5 are in this competitive set, but really it's a Defender competitor because you got the low range, you got the off-road capability, that kind of thing. It's a lot of money for this vehicle.
it is a lot of money for this vehicle. And the question, of course, is would you trade Lexus /Toyota reliability for, you know, Land Rover coolness, or, you know, that kind of British chic off-roadiness that the thing is known for, right? This kind of minimalist styling. It's very utilitarian and yet very cool.
Well, I think that most of our viewers, because I've read the comments, are gonna want that Lexus built-in reliability. Now, when you compare the two, there are some pretty substantial differences, right? Like the off-road trims on the Defender are going to have height adjustable air suspension, whereas the GX is all a fixed spring unit. The Defender, I think, has, in my opinion, it's got a much more airy interior. So the GX has got this really wide center console, which does have the effect of kind of closing down the feeling of shoulder room. And I don't love the dash design on this vehicle. The 14-inch screen is cool, the 12.3 instrument cluster is cool, but you get a huge expanse of black plastic across most of the dash, which doesn't feel very premium.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think the styling interior on the Defender is better. This is certainly very, very squared off. It's flat, no longer kind of rounded. It's actually Lexus's first flat kind of dashboard design. But really the key to this is how good is it off-road, and I kind of feel like we haven't challenged this vehicle enough to figure that out. I think what we're going to have to do is when we get it at the office, actually take it to someplace like Moab and actually put it through its paces.
Yeah, right.
The one thing I can tell you, Tommy, is, you know, with the previous GX, I always felt like I'd be afraid to take it off-road, because even though it was super capable, I felt like you would do a lot of damage to it. This one feels much more rugged, much more square jawed. I think, like I said, they baked into the DNA the off-roadiness. They just didn't add it on because it needed it for luxury's sake.
I like that you've got, you know, integrated front recovery points, integrated rear recovery points, a different fascia on the Overtrail to give you more clearance. I mean, there's a lot of really impressive stuff in this from a hardware standpoint.
Yeah, but you know what you don't have?
What?
The third row.
The Overtrail doesn't get the third row, yeah, which is a little bit of a miss to me, because if you have a family and you want a third row capable off-roader, there's not a lot of options. And this would have been probably my favorite option in that, but it's 5-seater only in the Overtrail. Look, I think they really, really nailed this vehicle. I know there's a lot of skepticism around going from the V8 to the twin-turbo V6.
Yeah, because that 4.6 was like, you know, like an icon of reliability.
Yes, right.
People put hundreds of thousands of miles on that. And
it was an incredible engine. But this engine delivers far more power. And we'll take it on the road here in a sec at the end of our off-roading, and we'll do a little driving impression. But, I mean, it's a more responsive, far faster engine that delivers 2,500 pounds of more towing capacity.
It tows basically what a Tundra will tow.
So big miss for me.
Okay.
You know, when you think about it, logically you hear the transition of 4.6 to 3.4, V8 to V6, you're going to think better fuel economy.
Not so much.
Both generations are rated at 15 city. The V8 was rated at 19 highway, this is rated at like 21 highway. But the fuel economy improvements are very minimal. So you get 150 pound-feet more torque, yes. You only get a little bump in fuel economy.
Well, will there be a hybrid coming? I mean, are they going to take the hybrid powertrain out of the Tundra and then maybe get you a little bit more fuel economy?
Well,
not that it does much more than
there is a hybrid coming.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I would like to see a better fuel economy improvement by going to a smaller displacement engine, even though you got the twin turbos.
Guys, we've done a lot of videos with the GX compared to the old one. We actually talked to the engineer. Where can you find that?
All of those are going to be over at alltfl.com.
Exactly.
We got a lot of content there. But look, I'll tell you what, let's do a little bit more off-roading in this video.
Yep.
We don't have any control of what we do because we're at the mercy of the Lexus folks and the weather. We've had really bad weather.
I feel they're going to put somebody in here with us. Is that what's going to happen?
They probably will. And then at the end of this, I want to zoom it down the road and see what it's like on the road, and we'll give our final thoughts.
Yeah, I feel like you've done more off-roading than the person that'll be sitting here with us.
Definitely not.
I definitely think we have, Tommy.
I bet that person's run Camel Trophy at least 6 times. So
but,
we'll cut to that now, and then we'll take it on the road and finish this puppy up.
But have they really put the Overtrail to work?
Overtrail, Dad. It's a Japanese company. Why would it be Overtrail?
How do you say over in Japanese?
I don't know, but it's not Uber. I guarantee you that.
No, it's very German. Sorry.
All right. So, look. So basically, what happened is the the Lexus team had a really cool course set for us, and then the rain came through and just wiped it out. So this is just gonna be like our first little taste of what it's like going off-road in the GX. You know, just a really mild little dirt road with some whoops and articulation. And yeah, I mean, what I'm most impressed with is the combination of the twin turbo 10 and the 10 speed. You know, I was really worried about managing low speed kind of jerkiness and throttle modulation, and it really doesn't seem to be an issue at all. You just take it super nice and slow. I mean, the great thing is the gearing is low enough in low range that you never really need to even get into the turbo, so you just put along first, second gear, whatever. Just let the vehicle do its thing. All right, so we are cruising up over our first little obstacle here. We got this little mound through some water. We're gonna feel some of the articulation and side tilt. Now, we did lose contact in the ground with the rear axle, but that's okay because the Toyota A-Track system, or I should say Lexus traction control system, kicked right in, braked the spinning wheel, sent power right where it needed to go, and that EKDSS did its job of, at least in the front, keeping traction with the wheels. That was pretty cool. All right, so we are cruising along to the next obstacle, and just because we can, let's just go ahead and try the crawl control system. So engage it, and then you spin this little knob to set the speed, and we're just gonna go second from the slowest, maybe third from the slowest, foot off the brake. We got all of our lockers disconnected, or turned off I should say, and we're gonna just let the vehicle crawl through the mud. And just like that, you know, got a little articulated, got a little mud action, but these Toyos are doing their job. No slip whatsoever. Crawl really wasn't needed, but I did want to see if it works, and perhaps unsurprisingly it does. My dad is outside filming right now, and let's see if he doesn't get run down by a cow. Look, I think Lexus did a lot of really great stuff with this, and it's not just software, right? It's more than just multi-terrain selecting different modes. Like, we do have proper recovery points and some underbody protection, which is awesome. I mean, some misses. Every version of the GX, regardless of whether or not it's an Overtrail or like a luxury, is going to have a side step of some kind. Just depends whether or not it's going to be a fixed side step or a like an electronic retractable one. I'd love it if they did one that was like, you know, available with a rock rail, which you should be able to spec after the fact. But yeah, I mean, there's very few misses from an off-road standpoint. I think the clearance is a little limited, and I am a little skeptical of what kind of tire you can fit in that wheel well, even with the lift. Luckily, I didn't see any like crazy body mounts like we saw in some previous generations of Toyota that you'd have to chop, get out of the way. But it is a fairly small fender opening. But someone out there is gonna have a 35 on this thing in the next 20 days. You know, the first one out of the lot's gonna have a 35. And there's you know, what's nice is, unlike say like a lot of the 6-cylinder Defenders where they do have like a 20-inch wheel from the factory, and then you really want to change the brakes a little bit so you can put like an 18 on here. This Overtrail's got an 18 from the factory, so you got some real sidewall, and you got the KDSS system, and it all kind of works pretty well straight out of the box. All right, then, well, I have to say that off-road experience was pretty minimal.
Yeah, it wasn't the most uber of off-roading, was it, Tommy?
No, and you know, so Lexus put together this big program and this big event, and then they got torrential rainfall, which just completely flooded out their course. In Tucson,
who would have thunk?
Yeah, so let's talk really quickly before we close this up about what this thing drives like on the road, Dan.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we should talk about its on-road prowess as well. So the thing that strikes me immediately is, you know, people buy horsepower, but they drive torque, and this has a lot of torque. So I would love to actually take this drag racing because it's got so much get up and go. It
sure does, yeah. I mean, it really has torque everywhere. So it's got 10 ratios, and it can be really selective as to where it will downshift to. But regardless of where it downshifts to, it always seems like torque is available.
And you know, the seats are comfortable. You do have this really kind of low, like you said, belt line, so you feel like you're in an airy open vehicle. I have lumbar support. I have massaging seats, Tommy.
Nice, Tad. That's great. And I don't know if you have them on this one. Oh, this is the Overtrail Plus, then you do.
I do have them. I told you, I'm not making this up. You're always like questioning me.
I'm sorry, I apologize. That's my job. I gotta make sure we're telling the viewers the right stuff. Exactly right.
Would you guys know if we didn't have it, you wouldn't care.
You wouldn't. They would care.
I don't know about that
stuff, Dad.
And I think, you know, we've driven now both the Overtrail and the luxury version of this, right?
Sure.
And I think this one actually has a better ride.
Far better. Yeah, I found the Overtrail, and granted it was on a much bigger wheel with a much smaller profile tire, but it didn't ride nearly as well as this Overtrail. The luxury one was much firmer.
Yeah, this trend of putting like giant wheels and tires, 22s on everything, not that this has them, is not great for ride quality. I'm actually amazed that they can make the thing as comfortable as it is, but with these big sidewalls, this thing is rather cushy. 18-inch
wheel is the way to go.
Where are you going?
I'm going into the Safeway parking lot. We're doing some real investigative journalism here.
I thought you were going to the Starbucks.
No, I could also go to that. That really would be where this vehicle would be at home, let's be honest.
You want to find out what kind of fried chicken they have here?
No, I don't want to do that. This is real hard work here I'm doing.
What are you figuring out? Turning radius?
No, that's pretty good.
Okay, I'll just sit here and I'll be amazed at what you're going to do.
You can be amazed. I'm going to take this camera.
Okay.
I'm going to hop out here.
All right, he's taking the camera. He's hopping out.
We're going to look at the payload capacity.
1,400.
No.
How much?
1,545.
All right, there you go. So that's pretty impressive.
1,500 pounds.
Yeah, and if you're going to tow 9,000 pounds, you need that much payload.
Well, and you know why I did that, right?
Because there's a Starbucks here?
How much Starbucks do you want to get?
I don't drink Starbucks.
No, the reason I did that is because this vehicle has kind of become the go-to overland rig.
Right, so you want as much payload as possible.
Yeah, and that's so important, right? Because people load these things up with the rooftop tent, and then they want to put the winch on it. You put the larger tires on it, which is going to have the effect of decreasing payload. And you do all this stuff and all your gear and fridges, and then all of a sudden, in most vehicles...
You have a fridge right there.
You do have a little fridge here, yeah. But most vehicles, you're going to be flat out of payload. This vehicle has got quite a bit. Now, that's...
All right, could I just jump in here, Tommy?
What?
I appreciate your hard work and your dedication to the overlanding community. I'm going to say that out of the first 5,000 sold, not one of them will actually ever go overlanding.
But
except for maybe our friends that we know.
Every single one of them is going to have a rooftop tent on.
Watch out, we're in a school district.
Yeah, I know. I'm going so slow.
All right.
I'm just putting along here.
I'm just being careful with the kiddos.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, yeah, people put rooftop tents on them, ladders, all the kind of trappings of off-roading and overlanding. But really, are you going to take an $80,000 vehicle and actually turn it into something that you live out of? Imagine all of the crumbs and all the stinky socks that would be in here.
You say that, Dad, but people have been doing it with 200 series Land Cruisers, old GXs for a lot of years.
Influencers hey, look at me. But real overlanding, right? The kind that maybe Scott does from the Overland Journal, right? That's very rare.
Sure, but people want to think that that's what they're going to do. So the first thing they do is put the rooftop tent on it and all the things I just listed. I do have to say, if you do care about overlanding, the onboard power situation is pretty weenie. There's a power out in the back. I think it's 400 watts. That's not a lot of power. Maybe the hybrid version is going to have more onboard power, which would be cool. But there's a lot to really like about this vehicle from an on-road standpoint.
Yeah, I would tow a big-ass camper.
I mean,
that's what I would do.
9,000 pounds with a vehicle that's 197 inches long. Andre's going to have to get this thing out on the Ike because I'm really curious to see. That seems like a lot of weight for a pretty small SUV.
Yeah, pretty small mirrors too, so you might have to have those little extensions.
Mirrors are not good for towing. No, not good towing mirrors at all.
But overall, I love the ride. Dare I say, it's probably better than much of the competition, at least in this... and I'm going to say it right now, Overtrail version.
Right. Love the ride. Powertrain's got a lot of power. Really dislike the fuel economy. That's pretty poor. And I really like the quietness in here. Yeah, it's one of the quietest cabins I've experienced in a long time.
Turn this camera. Watch this. Look at these. These are the world's slowest and yet most elegant. Look at that. Whoosh. Just a whoosh when you close the window, Tommy.
Yeah,
just a whoosh.
Windows you can't hear the motors at all. It's a very refined vehicle, and the biggest improvement in my mind over the previous generation is not the engine, it's not any of these goodies.
It's the looks. Get rid of that giant spindle grill.
That's cool. It's the visibility.
Yeah, sure.
You got the huge windshield now. It almost feels like a Wrangler upright style windshield, which is a great panoramic view of the world. Thin A-pillars, low belt line. That's really where they've been put.
Look, Lexus has a winner. They've got this one with the 2 rows. So if you need more room and less kiddos, you've got more overlanding / off-roading capability. Or if you want the one where you do the soccer route, you've got the 3 rows. So I think this has a lot of bandwidth. It's got Toyota's, I would think, legendary reliability, Lexus's luxury, and now you add the off-roadiness and all of the stuff you need to actually go seriously off-roading, and you got a winner on your hands.
Well, let us know what you guys think in the comments below. This has been Tommy.
And Roman saying,
see you next time.
and check out alltfl.com.